There is a massive movement happening within the longevity and aging landscape. It turns out there is much we can do to extend our lifespan and reverse the effects of aging. What we've been taught and led to believe about aging and human disease are now outdated and no longer accurate. That means it's time to change the current mainstream paradigm and have different kinds of conversations when it comes to our well-being. And it's time to recognize that we have the power within ourselves to dictate and drive our own health span and aging journey. Hi, I'm Suzaida Hippolito, host of Timeless Vitality, where we are redefining aging so we become truly timeless. You likely hear about people going on these self-discovery journeys. And so people go on these life-changing journeys and they come out on the other side a completely different person. Well, that was me. In 2019, I went on a self-discovery journey. I left my six-figure corporate career and my whole life in San Diego to pursue a full-time self-discovery journey. And that journey included healing, transformation, and awakening. And I awoke to a whole nother dimension of our human experience that is not in the mainstream. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut that one. Okay. My self-discovery journey included a spiritual awakening. I didn't know what was happening to me, but it turns out I was having these mystical experiences where life was revealing hidden truths to me about our true nature as human beings. My mystical experiences haven't stopped, and I don't want them to ever stop. Now, our world is shifting into an era of frequency medicine. In fact, Albert Einstein predicted this. One of his quotes said, "The medicine of the future is frequency medicine." And that future is now here. And it is changing the way we heal ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Now, what does frequency medicine have to do with mysticism? That brings me to our speaker today, Kimberly Sherry. Kimberly Sherry is an energy healer, and she has been in the healing arts for 40 years. She's also the best-selling author of the book, Access Your Ultimate Power, the Blueprint to Infinite Intelligence. Kimberly works with energy and the natural intelligence of the human body to calibrate vibrational frequencies within your own physiology to higher states of frequencies. What does this all mean? Well, we're going to get into that. But here's what else I want you to know. She works with clients from all over the world, and her clients have experienced profound shifts within their lives and within themselves, with their own mental and physical states, causing them to feel that increased health and vitality that we all long for. So hello, Kimberly. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you about this. I know you have a really remarkable story, but before we get into your backstory, or what I call your hero's journey, tell us how you got into energy healing.
Well, for me, it was up against living or dying. I was born and raised in a religious cult that was very suppressive. I was born in it from birth, and so I didn't know any different. It was as Jehovah's Witnesses. And so by the time I was 38, I was suicidal and I didn't see any doors out. And eventually, after walking into a sporting goods store and realizing there's no way I could do this to my kids, that I started to thaw out, and instead I got very angry. And this catapulted me in a direction of one, leaving this lifelong religious cult, which was like going on the moon, because I had to leave all the friends I had ever known behind. I eventually divorced my husband at the time, who had been cheating on me for 25 years, but there's no way you could get out. You have to be able to prove it. So lots of stuff around that. But having left all that, I went on a journey of self discovery and healing for myself, which landed me through several different things. One is in the direction of plant medicine. Now, that really opened me up to new realms, places you can't even get to on your own. So, different dimensions, different realities, and a lot of new information, and also really opening my heart. My heart had become very closed. And in the process of between that and also learning about Dr. David Hawkins' scale, he created a scale of human consciousness that measures our human consciousness on a scale from 0 to 1,000. And that's in his book, Power versus Force. But in 2012, after about 25 ayahuasca journeys and a massive expansion, I broke through his scale and started measuring beyond that. So, thus, I created the new scale, the new infinity system that's presented in the book that you talked about. But also in this journey of learning about frequency and measuring calibrations, I discovered that at one point I had a bladder infection. So I was sort of plagued with bladder issues my whole life from about the age of 12, not even knowing then that I had been sexually abused as a young child from about 2.5 until I went to kindergarten. And so, this in Chinese medicine, the kidneys represent your sexual organs. And so my kidneys had been become enlarged, and so the doctors thought, well, if we move the ureter, maybe that would help. And because there were just chronic infections, one after the other, you would clear it with antibiotics, and then the next thing you know, it's back again. So that went on for probably more than a decade. At any rate, after discovering how to work with calibrations and measuring, I decided to, after taking a dose of the antibiotics, to measure and calibrate my bladder. And when there was an infection, it was at a certain percentage. And then when the antibiotics kicked in, it went to 100%. And so I thought, this is pretty interesting. So after the antibiotics started to wear off, and then I noticed that the functioning of the bladder also started going down, that I decided to start using frequency. And so that's what I did without going into all the details. Just I started to use frequency to heal my bladder instead of this chronic thing of being on antibiotics. Well, after bringing it and keeping it at this high frequency, I never needed antibiotics again. And so I became a big believer in frequency medicine at that point. So that was sort of the beginning of really realizing how powerful this could be for our physiology. Yeah,
All right. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, what I hear in that, you basically healed your own bladder, is what you did.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
healed your own bladder,
bladder and kidneys. Yeah,
bladder and kidneys.
yeah.
And how many years ago was this?
That was quite a few years ago, probably more than 10, maybe close to 20 years ago by now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then,
And
after that, I kind of went on some different directions with this was energy and frequency. After coming out of the jungle, I started initially measuring people's money vibration, and that took me on a journey. And then I started using this infinity system towards uh, helping women step into their feminine power instead of this pushing, chasing kind of energy. And now this third iteration with the system is geared more towards our physiology.
Amazing, amazing. Now, can you give some other examples of how you healed other aspects of yourself with frequency medicine?
Um, I've been pretty darn healthy, other than that one issue, but I have recently become more fascinated with longevity and
Mm,
staying youthfully vibrant.
mhm,
And um, it was a year ago that I was guided by spirit to bring a group through a program. It was only 12 days. It was 12 days of practicing the process that's outlined in my book. And during these 12 days, I measured and calibrated for the whole group every body system and body organ, making sure it was functioning at 100%. And then there's also another part that can be measured that helps to know that the organ is functioning properly. And that has to do with how much light is in our organs. Now, that might be a new concept to some of your listeners, but we are our actually our physiology is starting to change as we're evolving, growing, expanding. And I brought this whole group through this process, and it was quite fascinating. The different results that people were getting, feeling calmer and getting better sleep. But what I've noticed, because I don't really have a lot of those kinds of issues, is that like my skin is starting to change.
mm.
Deeper lines. Now I'll be 70 next year, so
Wow, Kimberly,
right,
you look fabulous. Okay, you do not look a day over 50. Like,
right,
amazing.
yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And so, and it's getting better. So that's what excites me, is because I'm continuing down this path. And I'm kind of at the front of the wave of this whole part of longevity in what I'm doing, being able to measure and calibrate all of our body systems and body organs. Uh, but I wanted to share with you some of the things that can be calibrated that
Yes.
really make a difference in could make a difference in how we actually look and
Yeah.
feel, and our youthful vitality.
Well,
There's three
before you
main.
go into
Yeah,
calibrating, before you go into sharing that, could you explain to people what it means to calibrate and what frequency really means? If you can give a
yeah.
little bit of background 101 for people who are new to this concept.
Right, right. Well, even Nikola Tesla talked about um, that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So
Mhm.
you'll hear more and more about how everything is a frequency. It's just, atoms and molecules that are vibrating. And depending on how fast it vibrates, depends on what it actually becomes the in the material world, in a 3D world. But everything has a frequency, everything has a calibration. Different waves of light on the light spectrum, depending on how fast they vibrate, depends on whether you what the color is even. So and then when you talk about there's some light frequencies that you can't even see, but they're measurable. And so there's all different kinds of wavelengths and frequencies to all of this. And these can be measured and calibrated. So the way that I do it, just in simple terms, is I am really tapping into my intuition, my deep inner knowing. And so before I used to use like a pendulum, like if it would go one way, that would be a yes. If it would go the other way, that would be a no. Now that might be a little woo for some people, but um, kinesiology is also a very scientific method of measuring and calibrating. That's muscle testing. So if something is not of a high frequency, or if it's a no, then it would make the muscle go weak. So there's lots of different ways of calibrating and knowing. Mine has evolved to the point where I can either, well, I tend to count. because I think it's more accurate. And my counting is very fast. And so sometimes I'll just get I'll hear what the number is. Sometimes I'll feel what the number is. Sometimes I'll see. Sometimes I just know, and sometimes it's a combination of all of those things. So that's sort of how I get my answers and information, is really tapping into what I call our human technology, that part of our deep inner knowing that knows far more than we're really being able to tap into and to access now. Does
Yeah,
that
I
make sense?
love, yes, I love that information. And I love that you bring in tapping into our human technology. And I mean, for a lot of people, their ability or our ability to tap into our human technology is distorted. For instance, with
Yeah.
antibiotics, right? Like if you continued on antibiotics your whole life, would you even have access to these gifts of yours, these energy healing powers of yours?
Right. There's so much in the medical community that has caused us to doubt our inner knowing. I mean, just even and I'm not saying anything about doctors. They have their place, but I think too many of us have turned all of our seniority, all of our power over to doctors that they know best because they went to school, and then we've turned off those deep inner knowings and those signals that say, hey, I think something's wrong, something's just not quite right. Listen to that weird feeling you're getting. What is that little pain? So we've been trained to turn all of that off, to
Mhm.
doubt it, that we don't know what we know because we didn't go to school. And I think people are really wanting to start accessing those deeper parts that not only know, but that they can trust. Because I
Mm,
think that's the big part, is that the
mhm,
people might get an inkling about something, but then they don't trust it.
mhm.
And I think people are also wanting to get more into more natural ways, like I don't use anything invasive. There was one point when, and I don't down anybody for doing this, I'm just speaking for myself, but at one point I did use Botox, but I noticed after several years of even a very light dose, so only 25 units, but it started to break down the structure. And so I thought, and then they were talking about, oh, you could use fillers. And I thought, I'm not going down that road, it's like, and more of this and more of that. And so I just thought, I'm just going to go natural. I grew my hair silver out, and I, just am really on a natural path of vibrant longevity.
Yes, you are. Well, and going back to intuition, I mean, you listened to that voice inside of you to be curious about what was happening with your kidneys and bladders and what you noticed with the frequency changing based on, the medication, and you pursued that curiosity and it unlocked magic within you. And when I say magic, I mean this gift that you have as in the healing arts to be as an energy healer. And I
Right.
so appreciate that. What would be possible if more people actually listen to themselves? Like what spiritual gifts could be unlocked in you, audience, if you listen to that intuition? Well, now,
Yeah. You know, I just want to clarify a thing around people who call themselves healers. Because even though, I'll refer to myself as that, I know that I don't do any healing. All I do is help people access their own inner healer.
mm,
Probably one of the most profound experiences that I've had, and I think it's profound because on many levels you'll see. I was working with a woman in Peru, in the jungles of Peru, and this was from the place that we used to go to do our plant medicine ceremonies, which is deep in the jungle. There's no electricity, there's no running water, very primitive. And her and her family took the vaccination and ended up getting leukemia. She thought it was as a result of that. But at any rate, um, I don't speak Spanish. She doesn't speak English. And so I do this report where I calibrate more than 100 calibrations for things. So I did the report, I translated it through Google Translate. And so then we started working with each other. I think it was just initially we broke it up into 2 sessions because she was just too weak. And uh, yeah, so I had to translate everything through Google Translate that I was telling her, and everything she told me had to translate through Google Translate. But at any rate, after the first session, she started to feel a little bit better. A week later, even better. By the end of the month, she didn't feel like there was anything wrong with her. They were very, very poor family, obviously, and so she hadn't gone back to the doctor yet to confirm the results, but so far, so good. So that was kind of profound in that this was, I'm here in California, she's in Peru. There's a language barrier. There's a lot of barriers, and yet that's how powerful energy, these changing of these frequencies can be. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's why, at the beginning of this talk, I talk about mysticism because there is something, well, it's unseen. It's not something right now that our human minds can truly comprehend and embrace. And it works for the believers, for the your clients are living proof, that this stuff works. I know there's many people out there also that do energy work, and what and also energy work has actually been around for hundreds and thousands of years, right? Way
Forever.
before modern medicine. Like, hello.
Right. We got sidetracked by modern medicine. And it's like
Yeah.
now we're trying to get back to, how do we bridge both of these? How do we use the best of advanced technologies with our own innate knowing? And how do we bridge those two? So
Mhm.
that's, yeah,
Powerful.
I've noticed that a lot of people, I've seen this trend, where people are using a lot of different technologies. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these, like biomat to ground, even something as simple as that.
Mhm.
But I'm of the notion that those things are great to remind us of what we really already know. We
Mm,
don't really even need a biomat. You can ground from an airplane. And so, um, a lot of these technologies are helpful in bridging that point to where we really are just dialed in to our deep inner knowing and being able to change frequencies and elevate our frequency, which is where
mhm.
disease doesn't live. Viruses don't live in these high frequencies.
Right, right. I saw that on your website when I was reading about you, Kimberly, that disease, illness, mental health issues, none of that exists in high frequency states. Tell us more about that. Why? Why is that?
Well, one of the things I've discovered is that a lot of the underlying factors for chronic diseases, especially things like anything inflammation, anything thing that's an itis, um, usually the deep underlying cause is anger, rage, fury. And
Mhm.
the most fascinating thing that your audience might take it or believe it or not, but I've calibrated that about 90% of what people think and feel is not theirs. And
Mhm.
that becomes a very real truth once people have experienced what I can do. And we remove all of those energies that are not theirs. And
Yeah.
then they start to feel more like themselves. So those underlying frequencies, like fear, is a very potent frequency that's very contracting. And that also creates a lot of physiological disturbances in the body. So when you
Mhm.
start removing these underlying causes for very basic and simple, you know, uh, dis-ease in the body, then you start seeing how it's all related, and when people start removing these underlying causes of stress, then they automatically start feeling more joyful. People who are depressed, that's
Mhm.
often pushing down very massive amounts of anger, rage, and fury.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
lots of reasons and causes to be furious about what we see going on the planet. But what happens to people, though, is when we're holding these frequencies that are not ours, what it does is it tends to kick us out of our bodies. So we're not fully present.
Mhm.
If you've ever felt sort of kind of spacey, that's kind of the feeling you'll feel when you're not fully present in your body, fully grounded. And this is just one of the things I can measure, I can calibrate. Well, how much is that person in their body? Most people who have these massive amounts of fear, anger, rage, fury, uh, they're often only in their body 3%, 15%.
Wow.
They can still function like that, but they're you feel like you're just not here.
Yeah, if you're
Like sometimes,
disconnected, you're
yeah,
disconnected.
exactly. Sometimes if I sort of space out a little bit, and you feel like you're in that little clamshell, just looking out, and you're just a
Mhm.
pair of eyes. Uh, that's when I felt like that, I would measure how much am I in my body, and I was only in my body 15%. And so then, I would get regrounded, and it's like, oh, I'm back. So, but people function like that every single day because they don't know a different way. They don't know how to eliminate these energies so that they can be fully present.
Yeah, and they're not even aware. Like you
Right.
said, they don't, for them, it's like that's normal. And if that's what they believe is normal, how it's difficult to think any other way until they hear somebody like you, or they experience working with someone like you. And then all of a sudden, in many cases, I know I've attended some of your group sessions, and in many cases, within the span of that group session, 20, 30, 45 minutes, you can feel an instant shift, and you're just like, wow, I stepped into
Right.
this feeling anxious and stressed and all the things, and then all of a sudden I'm like so calm and at peace and grounded and feeling in my body.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating how quickly that shift can happen. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, people, well, they're waking up to these new ideas, and
Mhm.
hopefully, there'll be plenty of people on your platform that are interested in trying some new things. Maybe they've tried everything and it's just not working. And so, it can be quite profound to feel these shifts in a relatively short amount of time, and
Yes.
then being able to get a before and after of this. I call it a human technology assessment, where I measure all these things, and then the before and after. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to take years or months or even weeks to feel a difference.
Yeah.
I'll do a session, and an hour later,
Oh,
people are like, "What?" So
wow. Well, I
yeah.
can definitely say that it wasn't. Now, I suffered from so much anxiety, and I think by the time I started my self-discovery journey, I had healed my depression, but I had a lot of anxiety and I had a lot of angst. And it wasn't
Mm,
until I did my energy work or my spiritual work or my trauma healing work, and I
mhm.
lumped that all under energy healing,
Yeah.
that things finally started to open up to me. Like I felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't feel weighed down anymore by that
Mhm.
intense anxious fear feeling that, like, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, I suck, and all the things that go with that. And now, Kimberly, you were going to share something earlier about your work. I'd love to hear about that and share with our audience.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking some of the ways that I could help your audience the best. There is something that I'd like to offer for free, and it's a little mini course. But what it's designed to do is to help you discover the levels of fear and anger in your energy field. And I focus this mini course on those two things in particular. One is because it's the most common. And two, once those are more alleviated, you'll be able to feel the differences pretty much right away. And so that is something I'd like to be able to just offer as a gift to your audience
Thank
to
you.
be able to start feeling the difference.
Yeah.
There's so many people, they have no idea how much fear. And so when I talk about fear, people think about, biting their nails. There's a million faces to fear. Fear can just show up as being tired or unmotivated
Mhm.
or um, just distracted. Those can all be faces of fear, because there's a lot of different degrees of fear. There's fear and a lot of degrees of that, and then there's terror. A lot of people are terrified about what they see going on the planet. Those are
Mhm.
all different frequencies. And
Mhm.
then the energies of anger. And people think, well, I'm not angry. There's different degrees of anger too. You can just
Mhm.
be frustrated all the time and easily annoyed. That's still a degree of anger. And then there can be bigger amounts like rage and fury that are also all measurable. But if we're not aware of any of that,
Mhm.
we can be really leading a very disrupted life that affects our sleep, it affects our moods, it affects our relationships, it affects our appetites. I mean, on and on and on. So anyway, that would be, I think, really
Thank
super
you.
helpful for your
I
audience.
I love it. I absolutely believe that will be profoundly helpful because
Yeah.
people will get a taste of this energy work, the recalibrating of vibrational frequencies, even just at a mental state, which is where a lot of our fear like comes from, right? Because it's in our
Right.
heads.
Yep.
And I know, from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, with your clients, your clients, you can work with them in a way where they don't have to re-experience or relive the situations or traumatic instances that cause them to feel the fear or that cause them to feel the anger, correct? They don't have to relive that.
100%, 1,000%. Yes. As a matter of fact, there's so many things that can be remedied very quickly that are causing a lot of problems. And it can go, pretty out there to lots of different things, even unresolved past lives. That's a huge thing in relationships. And you don't have to know what all the past lives are. What was I wearing? Where was I? None of that matters. All I care about is what are the unresolved energies that are still here. That's
Mm,
what's causing a problem. So we
mm,
we don't waste a bunch of time. I mean, that's not to knock anybody who does past life regression. I just think it's very time consuming, when you can get to things much quicker. So the
yeah.
work that I do is very fast. We cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. And I'm more about just changing the frequencies. And
Yeah.
really, after a session, that's really when the work sort of begins, because now it's going to be your job to maintain those frequencies. That's where the
Mhm,
magic happens, in the higher, when you can maintain those higher frequencies.
mhm,
So oftentimes people somebody who maybe went to someone who got some help and they say, oh, I did that and it didn't work. Well, that's because you didn't maintain it. Maybe it helped, but
It helped in the
the really
moment. Yeah.
exactly, it might help initially, but then people often revert back to where they were. You know,
That's a
we're
good
we're
point.
creatures of habit, and we have a lot of habitual things going on. So my goal is to help people maintain that so that they can get more longer, long-standing results, and yeah, better help that way.
Now, Kimberly, I super believe in your work. I've experienced your work. I experienced your work uh,
Hmm.
in 2020, 2021, I think it was. Yeah.
Mm.
And why would you say, like, I really hope like you blow up and your work gets out in the mainstream big time. And why would you say it's taking a while for as effective as frequency medicine is, energy healing is? Why do you think it's taking a while to get out in the
Taken so
mainstream
long.
when it can make such a profound difference in people's lives?
Repeat that. Repeat that question one more time because you broke up, so I didn't hear it.
Oh, did I break up? All right, let me see. I was in total flow when I said that.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
I'll
were
say it again.
saying, why is
Why?
it taking so long? Yeah.
Yes, yes, because the work is so effective.
Mm,
It can be life-changing for some people, and yet it's not out in the mainstream. And I'm sure that
yeah.
we have people in the audience that are asking, why isn't this out in the mainstream? And why do you think
Yeah.
it's not? And why do you think it's taking a while for it to get out into the mainstream?
I think it's for the same reasons we're still using gasoline for fuel instead of the free technology that's available. There's a
Mm,
lot of forces on the planet that are benefiting through medicine, through pharmaceuticals, that want to keep people in the machine.
mm,
I'll put it that way.
mhm,
And some people have got a taste of that over the last couple of years of what that means. And, but I think more people, as a result of the last several years, are seeing, waking up to what's been going on, and they really are more interested in being sovereign over their bodies, being the
mm,
boss of themselves,
yeah.
tapping into this ancient wisdom
Mhm.
and future technologies,
Yes.
so that they can really, this is the wave of the future, and
Right.
it hasn't been, where it hasn't been time yet. We always think things should happen way before they actually do because we can see how necessary it is. We might even see someone that needs help, and it's like, well, why aren't they helping themselves? Why aren't they doing this? This could help them so much. Well, maybe they're not ready. And
Yeah.
so I think as a collective, the collective of humanity is starting to move up into higher frequencies where, one, it's going to be more acceptable,
Mm,
and more
mhm.
people are going to understand it and get it.
Right.
Now, I've kind of kept this pretty light so that, people can understand. Uh, and there are much deeper levels to all of this. And so the
Mhm.
more that people expand and grow and evolve, they will start tapping into all of these different levels.
Yeah. Well, you talk about waking up. That was a big part of my awakening, awakening to a whole nother dimension of our human experience. And I
Mm,
realized, oh my gosh, our brains, our minds are so powerful. Why
right.
are we not taught how to use our minds? Our bodies are so powerful. Why do we not understand how to use our bodies? And then coming into the energy work, the frequency work, the spiritual work, I kept asking, why is this not out in the mainstream? And then I learned, okay, this is all part of how the ancients used to live. And at some point in our human evolution, we lost sight of it. And there's some of us who are waking up or have awoken up to that our true nature as human beings, and we're in this movement to bring awareness to people, hence this summit that we're on right now.
Yeah.
And so I do hope that people just start to listen to that voice, that intuition, just like you did, just like what guided
Mhm.
you, and just like what I know my other speakers on the summit too talk about intuition. So I see a theme. Now, Kimberly,
Yeah.
there's three questions I ask all of my speakers. Okay.
Okay.
The first question is, what is your number one life hack for promoting your own longevity? And you absolutely you look stunning. You look so stunning. You absolutely do not look a day over 50. And so I
Mm.
really hope that whatever it is, I get to
Yeah.
implement and our listeners get to implement.
Well, if there was the one biggest thing is that I calibrate everything.
Mm,
I calibrate all the foods I eat, the vitamins that I take, how much I should take, um, even down to the music I listen to,
mm,
my environments. I yeah, if it's not at a high frequency, I don't participate too much. So the
got
more that I can participate in all the things in life that are of the highest frequency, then
it.
that's going to keep me in a higher frequency.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you guys want to explore that more, I invite you to connect with Kimberly. Like there's so much juiciness around that to explore.
Yeah.
My next question, where do you see the future of longevity?
I think that it's going in a lot of different directions. There's still I think there's going to be advancements in surgeries and so forth. I am more of focusing in the direction of the like biohacking and how to, in fact, I just started doing a new supplement that destroys the what are the senescent cells? What is this called? I don't want to promote their product, but it's the these dead cells that accumulate in the body, and
Hmm.
it's a very quick way of being able to remove those. So I think there's going to be more and more natural, non-invasive ways of tapping into our human technology. How do we amplify and support that so that we're just dialed in? We're like,
Yeah,
machines that are just finely tuned in a high frequency.
I love it. Yes, yes, yes. And okay, I realize that I got into such flow with what we were talking about that I didn't really touch on how frequency and the calibrating of that really truly impacts aging and longevity. And I know that's what your work is truly all about longevity. So I want to just
Yeah.
touch on that before we close and come back full circle.
Yeah. Well, when you can calibrate every body system and body organ and have it function at 100% in the highest amount of light, which is now 350 millivolts of light, uh, doing that and also um, all of the food that you're eating, making sure that that's all of the highest frequency, that you can't help but be functioning at your most optimal level. Now, even things like your skin. So there's three different layers of the skin. There's your epidermis, there's your dermis, which has collagen and elastin. What is that?
Elastin? Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
So
Elastin.
that's not quite right. It's like, why does that not sound right? Yeah, for your elasticity in the skin. And then your subcutaneous layer, your fat layer, all three of those can be measured and calibrated. Your
Mm,
collagen, there's four different kinds of collagen. Those could all be measured and calibrated. Your telomeres, that has to do with how your cells reproduce identically. And over time, it gets shorter and shorter. So when we start accessing all of these parts of our body and supporting them energetically, so that and it's not like waving a magic wand. That's one thing I want to really make clear, is that bringing you to these higher frequencies doesn't mean that now you're healed or everything is functioning 100%. It just means that now you've providing your body with the energetic support it needs so that it can start healing itself. It can start returning
mm,
back to stasis. So
mm,
that's a really important thing to know, is that
mm,
like the skin takes time for these deeper layers to come to the surface.
mhm.
And so you're not, going to wake up the next day after a clearing and go, oh, these things take time. But nonetheless, it's definitely the wave of the future. And I'm excited about this because I'm kind of at the front of the wave of these newer technologies. And I keep learning more and more every day, new things to calibrate and measure. I'm like, I geek out on all that stuff.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Right,
It's
right.
like it's your heart, it's your passion, and
Yeah,
truly, truly, you are helping revolutionize the way we think about our bodies, the way we think about our environment, the way we think about ourselves, and the way we can think about what it really truly means to age and become timeless. Now, I have
right.
one more question to ask that I ask all of my speakers, which is this third. So that's three questions I ask all my speakers. And this third question is this: what thought or act takes you back to a childlike, playful state?
Hmm. This is kind of a funny one. I think of when, like, we grew up playing jump rope and hopscotch and jacks. Those three things, I just
Oh my
loved
gosh,
those. And
yes.
um, I was really good at jump rope, and so those simple things that kids used to do back then, where
Yeah.
I feel so bad for kids now that they're just swiping and their brains are turning to mush.
Oh my
So
God,
yeah,
that's another interview.
that's
Kimberly,
another
that's another talk
that's
really
another
we can do.
yeah, yeah. Well, there is a whole nother thing we didn't even talk about that would it could be a whole nother podcast, but I just want to touch on it just very briefly about time. You were talking about time
Mm,
and our relationship to time and how time is really made up, and to keep us on a certain trajectory and under this whole matrix thing. And so there's ways of manipulating time in that sense. That's a whole nother thing. So anyway, more for another time.
more for that. And any
Yeah.
last parting words for our
Let's
audience?
Well, I hope you enjoy the free gift. I believe it has a meditation in there as well, so you'll be able to get to experience what it feels like to have a little bit of relief if you feel fearful about anything or anxious about anything. That this will really help you. So I hope you
Yes.
will take me up on that free offer. It's
Yes,
very
yes.
helpful.
Thank you. And such a generous offer. Thank you for creating that for our audience. Kimberly, it's been such a pleasure, very enlightening, very different kind of conversation, introducing something that is not yet out into the mainstream for our audience to begin really taking charge, getting back into the sovereignty of their human experience. And thank you for taking us there. I hope you all have enjoyed this. I love you guys so much. And again, thank you, Kimberly. Much love to you.
Thank you, Suzaida. I so appreciate you being allowing me on your platform. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
oh, thank you too. Much love and gratitude in this space. Bye, everyone.
Namaste.